So a very warm welcome to this Royal Society of Chemistry webinar, and thank you all for joining us to talk about the current changes and challenges facing universities, higher education and research. So my name is Helen Pain and I'm Chief Executive here at the Royal Society of Chemistry. So UK universities are facing a financial sustainability crisis at a time when there isn't significant new public spending to help alleviate it, and many businesses are also experiencing a challenging climate. So across the country, courses and departments, including chemistry, are experiencing significant change. And universities are a major training pathway into the chemical sciences, equipping graduates with the practical, digital and sustainability skills employers need. And universities are also central to the UK's research and innovation ecosystem, delivering chemistry research that advances healthcare and drives sustainability approaches and that benefits businesses and communities across the UK. So we know that chemistry in higher education, research and skills are a priority for our members. And we are also working with our members and communities to champion chemistry provision, protect opportunities for students and secure the skills and knowledge that the UK needs for the future. So today's discussion is an opportunity to explore the impacts and financial sustainability crisis in UK universities. It's also a chance for you to hear directly from those working in chemistry departments at different career stages and in different UK nations, and also begin shaping a conversation about the future of chemistry in higher education. So please do use our Q&A function to share your questions throughout the session, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by the four panellists that hopefully you can all see on screen. So Vinicíus, Jenny, Jason and David, who will bring their various perspectives to a discussion on the changes and challenges facing higher education. So first of all, I'd like to welcome to the panel Dr. Vinicíus Diniz. Vinicíus is a research fellow from the School of Chemistry and Chemical Engineering at the University of Surrey. He has been working on the degradation of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. He's also a Broadening Horizons alumnus and holds a doctorate in analytical chemistry from the State University of Campinas in Brazil, and has also worked as both a chemistry teacher and a biology teacher. So Vinicíus, if I can hand over to you to just give us an introduction and your thoughts in the next 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Many thanks, Helen. Yes, as Helen said, I'm Vinicíus Diniz. I'm a currently research fellow at the University of Surrey. First, I would like to thank MRSC for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be discussing the change and challenge in chemical science with such distinguished experts. To kick off the things, when the conversation turns to the universal financial crisis, I want us to think about the early career researchers. That's where I am right now, because I believe that the ECRs are the future of higher education and research. So I will briefly outline three critical areas where this crisis is reshaping and often obstructing our career path. The first point is the necessity to constantly move, which severely impacts personal settlement and family formation for ECRs. If you look at a typical ECR journey, it's a series of 2 or 3 years fixed-term contracts, sometimes even shorter, tied to specific grants. When that grant ends, you have to pack up and go where the next one is, which often means a different city or country. My question is, how can we expect ECRs to build a sustainable life, to settle down, buy a home, or even think about like starting a family when their jobs literally requires them to be ready to uproot and leave every few years? I have been lucky enough to have a partner who understands this dynamic, but honestly, most of us don't have this lucky. This instability creates a tremendous personal burden. It's not just a career problem, it's also a life problem, and I believe it's contributing to some of our brightest young minds choosing to leave academia entirely for move for more stable sectors. Next, let's take a look at the funding and fellowship strategies that are now in crisis, which often relies on hyper-specific niche grants. As a principal investigation or senior academic, you have the flexibility to pivot your research group. If a new funding opportunity arises in, say, in advanced materials, for example, you can adjust your group focus you have this kind of leverage. But for early career research, trying to land their first independent grant or fellowship, they're often trapped. They have spent a decade becoming an expert in a niche area. If the funding agencies aren't calling for proposals in their exactly specialty this year, their options are significantly limited. So I believe we need to find mechanisms that genuinely support the researchers and their long-term potential, not just the short-term goals of the specific project. Crucially, most fellowships are purely research focused also, but I believe they should come with the flexibility and opportunity to officially develop teaching skills, which is a requirement for a early career researcher to move for his next step as a lecturer. And also my third point isn't just like a challenge, but also an idea for how the sector can constructively help early career research develop skills needed for their next career step, and also perhaps save money for universities. For example, the competition for like stable lecture positions is fierce. To get one, you need to have a strong teaching portfolio, yet early career researchers on research contracts often don't have formal teaching duties. This is a huge gap that we need to address. Based on this, I propose that we look at this as a win-win opportunity for the university research and training goals. For example, early career researchers could offer like short courses or develop short modules for universities to teach PGR students or even undergrad students on some topics they are experts. This, together with like guesting lectures that also early career researchers can give at the universities, could save university monies, and also universities could offer optional courses and like more like opportunities for their students to thrive and learn new skills. With that, I believe universities can save money, and also the early career researchers can develop the skills needed to get to their next positions. So in summary, I believe that by championing more flexibility funding and creating structured value-added teaching opportunities like the PGR modules, we can turn this challenge that we are now into sustainable pathways and secure the future talent pipeline for the chemical science. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vinicíus, for sharing your thoughts. And I think it's been really important to hear it directly from an early career researcher as well, and also your thoughts around how the universities can support those in early career, but also in terms of the financial sustainability as well. So thank you, and we'll come back to questions. So please do ask questions in the Q&A if you have questions for any of our panelists, and we'll have plenty of time to move on to those. So next, I would like to come to Dr. Jenny Burnham. So welcome, Jenny. Jenny is a senior university teacher and school programs and regulation lead at the University of Sheffield. She also chairs the RSC's Higher Education Interest Group. So over to you, Jenny.
Hi, also thank you for the invitation. And it's an honour to be able to represent my interest group, the Higher Education Group, and the members of our community who specialise in teaching in higher education today. So I've got a script. And I'm going to start with university finance. Arguably, the most significant change in UK higher education has been the shift from state-funded higher education to higher education funded by student fee income. That's been about 80% since 2011 change and reduction in state finances. With home fees frozen and decreasing relative to inflation for 7 years, the university sector has become increasingly reliant on overseas student income, and that represented 23% of total income, or £11.8 billion in 2022-23. Unfortunately, over the last 2 years, overseas student numbers have declined horrifically by over 90,000 within the sector, and universities also cannot rely on research income to balance their books. My colleagues tell me that high demand and limited provision has seen grant success rates fall as low as 5%, which is a lot of wasted effort. And other areas of research that I was privileged to benefit from was an EPSRC funded PhD studentship when I was a postgrad. And these have also fallen from data saying that there were 2,902 in 2010-2011 to 1,150 in 2022-23. In chemistry, the number of first-year undergraduate students has fluctuated over the years, but the trend is downwards from its high point at over 6,000 students to now to most recent data that says there's 5,135 entrants in 2023-24. This is more keenly felt in some departments than others. Student numbers are not limited or capped at predetermined maxima. And this year, some HEG members, some of my colleagues, are teaching 50 to 70 more students than they had planned. And whereas other departments have under-recruited by as many as 100 students below their nominal capacity. What are the consequences? Higher education is changing dramatically. Institutionally driven efforts to find efficiency savings through programme and curriculum review are occurring. We've got small departments that are being merged into multidisciplinary super schools, fixed term contracts are not being renewed, GTA budgets are being cut, and there's voluntary severance and successive severance, reducing staff numbers. People are under pressure. Education isn't something that's easy to cut workload from and automate, and dedicated staff keep trying to make things work, but it's dangerous and a difficult time. Where else have I got? We've got chemistry deserts emerging. As departments close, the noisy closures like Hull and Bradford and the attempted closures like Reading are occurring alongside quiet closures that are occurring under the banner of these super schools. And we're seeing increasing deserts of chemistry provision alongside the existing long-standing one on the Somerset-Devon border. I'm running out of time, but I do want to cover student finance. Students are having to work. The maintenance loan is means tested. If you're a parent, you should have been saving for your child, had your education since they were born. Because the maintenance loan is means tested and students are running £400 to £500 on average deficit in themselves and having to undertake part-time work. Living at home is an increasingly attractive option for students, with 30% of UCAS applicants wanting to do so. And we see there's a reduction in chemistry provision, so that's impacting people who are going into chemistry because there isn't chemistry in the local area. For me, it's injustice in the system that upsets me the most. I am seeing an increasing divide between affluent students from university-educated households and those who have less. The stereotype of a student, school leaver, living away from home in halls and shared accommodation, partying at night, studying by day, and living their best lives is not a reality. Living away from home is excluding students with strong ties to their homes. The divide between the well-supported and the self-supporting is increasing as the self-supporting juggle lectures with shifts and other responsibilities. Students graduating this year could have accumulated over £90,000 in debt. That's more than my husband's first house cost. And as cost increase and provision reduces, access to higher education chemistry is increasingly favouring an elite minority of students. And these students will in turn move on to shape and define the chemical sciences of the future. And that is a problem. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Jenny, thank you so much. You've shared so much in that introduction. Particularly taken when I mentioned at the beginning that we're looking at the current changes and challenges facing universities, higher education and research. We should add to that the students and the people that are affected as well, because clearly it's such an interconnected ecosystem that affects everyone. Also taken by your comments about the reduction in accessible kind of courses for those from areas where they may not have access to particular kind of chemistry provision, and that makes me think about some research that the RSC's done on the heat map that we produced to look at kind of where some of those deserts are appearing across the UK. So thank you very much, Jenny. I'm now going to hand over to Jason. So Professor Jason Love, he's Head of Chemistry at Edinburgh University and also the Chair of Heads of Chemistry UK. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Helen, and hopefully I can put forward a head of school perspective in particular to this conversation. And what I'd like to do is, in a way, reinforce some of the things that Jenny and Vinicíus have already said, and try and put that into a head of school context. I think it's recognized that heads of schools often sit in this precarious position between the university management and their own staff. And there's a lot of top-down initiatives and then bottom-up initiatives that the head of school has to juggle with. And this is particularly apparent in this climate in which budgets are really, really constrained, and yet we still have to maintain our programs, our chemistry programs, and make sure that our students get a valuable education. Chemistry and I guess universities in general have been underfunded for years. So in a way, this is not new. It's just becoming a little bit more apparent. Tuition fee income is really not representative of the cost of the program delivery. And research is cost neutral at best. And so these challenges, and they are significant challenges for a chemistry department, is how do you kind of maintain your programs, maintain your research delivery, but then you're not getting the funding that you actually need to do that. And of course, a chemistry school or department sits within the wider context of the university, and the university needs to kind of really support the schools of chemistry and the departments of chemistry, and see that subject as something that's very, very important to the whole university. I think a chemistry department is very susceptible to volatility in a higher education sector, generally because chemistry departments are much smaller than other departments. At Edinburgh, with the exception of Divinity, we are the smallest school in the whole university. And Edinburgh is a big chemistry school when you consider the rest of the UK as well. So you can see that size is potentially an issue because it does leave us a little bit susceptible. There are limited numbers of students that want to actually study chemistry, and of course we all know that chemistry is very expensive to teach. We have to have laboratories, so our buildings and our infrastructure are expensive to teach, expensive to use and to maintain. So this results, I think, in a lack of resilience in the subject and in the departments, particularly in the academic and the professional service staff. We have a lot of, I think, fragility if we lose staff, and this is what's currently happening at the moment across the sector. We are losing staff, and that really kind of gives us lots and lots of pinch points as a chemistry department. And of course, as Vinicíus said, we've got this impact on the pipeline of young talent coming through as well, because if effectively, as far as I'm aware, the majority of chemistry departments are not hiring anybody, and so that's really kind of blocking that pipeline of talent, which is very, very worrying indeed. I just thought I'd give a little bit of insight into the Scottish system as well, because in the Scottish system it's a 4-year BSc programme and a 5-year master's. And so you can immediately see that's a real burden on the way that higher education funding has changed. It's shifted away from the government to the person. And so a person that wants to come and do a master's course in chemistry at Edinburgh has to find the funds for 5 years. So that's 5 years of tuition fees and 5 years of living expenses. And so that's a real challenge for lots and lots of people. The fee income that we get is devolved to the Scottish government as well. So all of our Scottish students get no tuition fees. They don't have to pay tuition fees, but the Scottish government provide a certain amount of money. So that's devolved. And if we exclude Dundee from these numbers, which we all recognise is undergoing a significant transformation, the financial contributions by universities have dropped by 90% in 2 years. So you can see this is a real significant challenge. The finances are really, really problematic. But I think that we have to stay positive. And at the end of this webinar, hopefully we'll put forward a lot of positive things that we can do as schools of chemistry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. And also thank you for highlighting the very specific financial picture in Scotland, because I think that's something that we can sometimes overlook in terms of the different kind of funding options or the different funding mechanisms across the UK and particularly across different nations. Also for highlighting that really important point about the pipeline of talent and, you know, where future roles for those in academia and where they might come from if there is a decreasing opportunity and there's kind of cuts across those roles within universities. So thank you. I'm just going to come to our final panellist, who is Professor David Smith. David is the Executive Dean at PVC at the Faculty of Science and Engineering at Swansea, and he's also a trustee of the RSC, so a very valued colleague amongst the RSC and chairs our Professional Standards Board. So David, thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to contribute to the webinar. As Helen said, I am Pro Vice Chancellor Executive Dean for Science and Engineering. So I was reflecting slightly when Jason talked about heads of school being squeezed between the university management and staff and students working in departments. I think I fall into the category of the university management. But for me, I was reflecting a little bit in preparing for today. Two ways that I can think about the impact of the current challenges have. One is a very personal one. So my first academic role was in Exeter, and at a time when the chemistry department closed in Exeter. I also reflect, I've been here in Swansea for 3 years, and Swansea was a university that before my time took what I might say, and what others might say, short-sighted decision to close chemistry, and then the enlightened decision to reopen chemistry, but just reflecting how long it takes to rebuild that capacity if it's taken away. So we've got some really great stories about recruitment to our undergraduate degree programs here in Swansea. Had a very good recruitment round in August for undergraduate students, but it's taken an awful lot of work to get to that stage. And I think just in reflecting, what I would say, there is a bit of a feeling that this is something, a situation that chemistry has been through before. And it's very easy to think, well, this is like 20 or 30 years ago. And I would say it isn't. It is very different. This is not a particular issue for chemistry as a whole. It is a crisis that is affecting universities, and we're reflecting just one aspect of that. So Jenny, you talked about the loss of about 90,000 international student numbers. And the back of the envelope calculation, those international students are largely paying universities of the order of £20,000 a year. That is £1.8 billion lost from annual loss of income from the higher education sector across the UK. And it is a sector, cross-subsidy is written right the way through higher education, whether it is the cross-subsidy between teaching and research, whether it is the cross-subsidy between disciplines. Chemistry has never been necessarily a huge recruiter of international students. So we may not see within chemistry a significant drop-off in international students, but it is the international students who've been coming to engineering departments, to computer science departments, to business and management departments. They're the ones that are lost from universities and from the income, and the impact is then spread right the way across all of the disciplines. And so thinking in particular, so it's not a chemistry issue per se, but thinking about why the impact is felt so greatly in chemistry. Chemistry is an inherently high cost discipline. We don't necessarily, Jason, you were reflecting on the size of chemistry within Edinburgh, and chemistry has high fixed costs. It also has high running costs as well, thinking about the cost of both educating students and also in research. We talk about research funding, typically even for UKRI, UK government funded research, universities only recover about 2/3 of the cost of that research. And if the expectation has been that student fee income and international student fee income makes that difference, with a collapse in international student numbers And also, just to be clear about it, the value of the tuition fee is now worth about 2/3 of what it was. That means, taken across the piece, it now costs universities to teach home students. So that money isn't there available to cross-subsidise research. And of course, chemistry is one of those disciplines that is utterly reliant upon postgraduate research students. And that funding from the research councils isn't there to provide the funding for PGR students, who are at the engine room of our research and will feed into the pipeline that Vinicíus, that you were talking about. And thinking more widely about the response from universities, I really don't believe that chemistry is undervalued across the sector. But senior leadership teams, senior management teams, vice-chancellors, I think largely they understand the value of chemistry, both to their own universities and to the community and to the UK more generally. But they have to take decisions based on self-preservation of the university rather than long-term societal and economic need. Fundamentally, the issue at the moment is very short-term. It is about cash. And to put it crudely, it is about survival through this period. And university leadership teams have to take some invidious decisions. And sometimes the end result of that is that chemistry departments are threatened. So thinking a little bit about the RSC's response to this, one of the things that I think is really important is the responsibility that we've taken in dealing with some of those big questions. The government, UK, devolved governments expect the sector to take responsibility for this challenge themselves. We have to be realistic that there will not be a big source of funding and a huge change in higher education funding that will solve this problem. Yet universities are set up to compete against themselves. It's one of those ironies that we're instinctively collaborative in terms of our research, but when it comes to students, we're intended to compete against ourselves. And that means the collaboration that we would want to do in order to share resources and preserve that capacity is really very challenging. And we struggle to deal with Competition and Markets Authority legislation. I think there's some real challenges and opportunities as well there in terms of collaboration. And the Royal Society of Chemistry can be a really honest broker in thinking about some of those collaborative opportunities. And fundamentally, dealing with that question about chemistry deserts and chemistry heat maps, and thinking about wrestling with the meaningful question about how many chemistry departments we truly need and where they should be. And just to finish off, Jason, you talked about there being a Scottish dimension. There is also a Welsh dimension here. And higher education is a devolved matter for Wales as well as in Scotland. Welsh government, it's only very recently that we had a fee increase from £9,000 to £9,250. It sounds like a small amount, but it adds up for students once it's multiplied out. So there are challenges there, but there are also opportunities. So we are a relatively small nation. We have closer access to decision makers, and we try and use that influence as much as we possibly can over things, for example, about the international levy, which we hope we will be able to resist in Wales in a way that UK government seems insistent on applying. So there are both opportunities there in being in a devolved nation, but also challenges.
Thank you very much, David. And thank you also for really highlighting that important point around the competition versus collaboration. I think it's a challenge that you and I have both spoken about in the context of some of the universities that we've sought to support, but also where where we're looking at ensuring that we can have the right provision of chemistry across the UK. So thank you to the four panelists. I'm going to come back to each of you with a number of questions, and thank you to those who've joined the webinar for the questions that you've posted in the Q&As. Can I first just want to acknowledge one of the comments, this is for you, Jenny, that's come through in the Q&A, just from Zach at the University of Bradford. Just thank you for the summary, Jenny. As a member of the chemistry team at the University of Bradford, you really captured the inequality, unfairness and harm that is occurring. So Jenny, thank you for that. I'm going to come now to a question that's specifically about EDI and the impact that can have in terms of disproportionate impact on those within the universities. So just if I can just read out the question, then I'll come to each of you just for a very brief answer to that. So increasing workload demand for greater efficiency in academics work and increasing teaching student support workload caused by severance and non-replacement of staff has a significant and disproportionate impact on disabled staff, and as staff experience is ultimately the student experience on students. So what steps can we take to ensure that EDI matters such as this is not something that's cut in the name of financial stability? If I could come, Jenny, can I come to you first, then I'll come to Vinicíus and then Jason and David.
Not wanting to downplay the disabled part of this question, because disabled people have got less capacity because they're working harder to be in a normal world with their disability. But this question extends to part-time workers, to people with caring responsibilities, and the people are getting trapped. I am trapped in the gender pay gap, and as a disabled staff member, and I'm as a member of teaching staff, I am at probably the zenith of my career, which is a bit disturbing. So what steps can people take? Well, it needs highlighting and it needs bringing back. At Sheffield, we've got an extremely effective local branch of our union, and they campaign ever so strongly and effectively. And in the change management processes, equality impact assessments have to be considered, and holding the senior management to account. And unfortunately, when those of us with less capacity and greater teaching responsibilities feel the pressure, it's the students that suffer, because there's less time for them, there's less feedback, there's less. So they're on their own and struggling more. And I'm not very hopeful, unfortunately. Maybe Jason and David can be more hopeful.
Thank you, Jenny. Just come to Vinicíus for a brief response from you, if you're able.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Alan. I think I want to first of all say about like the Broaden Your Horizons program of the RSC. I think the program that I am alumni has been helping like students like from minorities to understand more about the chemical sector in the UK. So it's been like a very nice program. I think if you had an opportunity to join the program, I think I would really say go for it. It's really nice. And regarding the workload and everything, I think the universities could try to use more the hands of the ECRs on this kind of matter to try to reduce the workload for like teaching staff. For example, my example, I'll be willing to help teaching and like helping to supervising students to get more experience when I start to apply for lecture positions. This would help to reduce working load and then giving opportunities to ECRs. I think this, as I said during my opening, it could be like a win-win situations in this case. Not sure how the universities could do that, but I think it's a discussion to be had.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Vinicíus. Jason, can I come to you?
Sure. I think this is a very interesting topic and one that's dear to our hearts. We discussed this issue of workloads and workload allocation models at the last Edge of Chemistry UK conference, actually, so we shared a lot of thoughts and a lot of interest there. The mantra that my particular university is talking about at the moment is doing less with less. And I kind of agree with that because we cannot expect staff to just take on more and more and more. So we need to do less, and we need to be a bit more choosy in how we teach and what we're teaching and what research we're doing. And all of the everything we do as a department of chemistry, we need to think hard about. At my particular school, we instigated about a year ago a 10% cut in all of our teaching to try and free up a little bit of staff time and student time for reflection and consolidation. So we've introduced a reading and consolidation week effectively into each semester, and that is reaping dividends for us at the moment because we are kind of cutting staff effectively. So, or we're not hiring staff where we need to hire them. So that's I think a good thing to do. The other thing I think that's important is think about the portfolios that are offered, the programs that are offered. And I know, again, at my school over the last 5 years, we've been really thinking hard about that, reducing the complexity and numbers of our programs so that they are easier to administer. So that kind of helps with our professional service staff, and easier to teach as well, with more obvious kind of career pathways for the students to undertake. So I think there are things that you can do as a department to try and really do less, and otherwise people will just take on more and more of that burden and burn out, and it's really not equitable. It's going to impact on some staff more than others. I think that's a real problem. So doing less with less, yes. Thank
you very much, Jason. Okay, I'm going to come to David, but David, if I might, I'm going to use Chair's prerogative because we've got many more questions coming through now, and I'd just like to move on to a question which I think is very much in your sphere of kind of opportunities. So, do you believe that the RSC degree accreditation programme plays a meaningful role in helping departments maintain stronger staffing levels compared with those without professional accreditation? Have accreditation requirements and benchmark statements added pressure on the resourcing of the chemistry departments, especially for those programmes where degrees are more applied? So is this a time to think again about accreditation, which I think is a really pertinent question?
Yes, absolutely, Helen. So there are the two aspects to the two questions. So the first one is, does accreditation to a certain extent protect chemistry departments? To a certain extent it does. Universities take very seriously maintaining professional accreditation for disciplines like chemistry, but also in medical and professional degree programs, regulatory bodies. That is very, very important to them, and it can be very helpful in terms of defending staffing levels. But of course, there is a risk that if those requirements are unrealistic and unmanageable, it may be then that the university has to take a difficult decision and says, if we can't meet that standard, there is no point in continuing to offer that discipline. So there is a requirement in order for us to make sure we maintain standards, but we are also flexible in how we might apply those, because there is a risk that if we are far too rigid, it will be difficult for universities to meet those requirements. And that brings me on then to the second question, where I think, and just to sort of declare the interest there as Chair of Professional Standards Board and a previous Chair of the Committee for Accreditation and Validation, I have a lot of experience in accreditation within chemistry. And I think we are one of the most flexible and enlightened professional bodies in the way that we apply our standards. We're not strict in what we expect. We set expectations of the standards that we want from our chemistry degree programs, but we don't require and we don't instruct chemistry departments how they should do that. And that is quite a surprise. I was at a meeting earlier in the year with Advance HE, where the Royal Society of Chemistry was clearly seen as being one of the most enlightened professional bodies in terms of being flexible over accreditation requirements. So that expectation about statistical thermodynamics, there is no requirement to teach statistical thermodynamics, for example. We don't have a prescriptive curriculum. In terms of lab experience, a meaningful lab experience is very important. But we've moved on from just lab hours to have a skills list to think about what we want chemistry graduates to have. And I'm interested because accreditation is often used as a reason not to change. That's not just for chemists, that's true across lots of disciplines, Whereas actually we want Royal Society of Chemistry accredited degrees to be innovative and flexible. So I think we have the framework in place. What we need to make sure is that we're supporting chemistry departments to take advantage of that flexibility while still maintaining those standards.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dave. And I think that point about innovation and flexibility is key. And I think sometimes there are perceptions of the accreditation, but we do need to challenge those and also to continue to review, because of course the degrees need to be kind of keeping pace with the external environment as well. So thank you. Jenny, I'm going to come to you next. I have a question which we've just slightly kind of reframed. I'm trying to keep track of many questions coming through now. But this one is, are there any thoughts on the system trialled in the Netherlands where a fixed sum was given to each researcher to use for research, and there would be a regular assessment of how well those funds were used?
So that's really interesting. I think that would be really helpful. It upsets me, the amount of wasted effort of my colleagues, mostly because my colleagues spent 3 weeks writing a platform grant proposal last year that didn't get funded, so he was 3 weeks late with his marking. It has implications. And the system in the Netherlands seems, it's not just the Netherlands, I think they have a similar system in parts of the North America and Canada, where faculty just have money to do stuff with, and they're expected to do stuff with it. And there's a lot of innovation in the education space because they are resourced to do it. So I think it would be helpful. We're looking for efficiency savings, and the UKRI advice is to focus on fewer, bigger, or fewer, more targeted applications, but that comes with a high stakes. If you don't get that, you don't get anything. Well, that's for the management to think about, how to deploy effort. But I think it would be a thing that would be worth people considering. Could be helpful.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I have another question now about the support for careers. So thinking about careers beyond academia, and particularly, I think some of the comments that were made earlier about the talent pipeline. So with less jobs existing in academia for chemistry PhD graduates, what are universities doing to support careers beyond academia? And how are chemistry PhDs being reframed from being an academic apprenticeship to being an award centred around wider transferable skills? So I wondered, Jason, can I come to you first with that one, then I'll come to Vinicíus, who I think will also be able to offer some thoughts on that.
Sure. I think the chemistry PhD being reframed, I think that's an ongoing exercise. So with UKRI bringing in CDT funding and having these kind of centres for doctoral training or whatever they're called, other kind of styles of kind of cohort building activities, they are becoming more and more important, more and more valued. I would say the only downside to that approach is that these centres for doctoral training are very expensive. You spend a lot more per student putting them through that kind of research education than you would if you were kind of teaching normally a PhD student. So I think that's an interesting point. I think for supporting careers beyond academia, I know that departments make a lot of use of alumni to show that there are careers beyond academia. We as a school bring in our alumni to help and just to highlight things that are going on. I think there is a need at the moment, I think, for departments to reflect on what they teach and how they teach. Are they teaching for academics, or are they actually teaching for the wider discipline? And that is something I think that is important to consider, because the majority of undergraduate students and even postgraduate students do not become academics, the vast majority. And so having an academic focused teaching is probably not a good idea. We need to think about what our students do. But I think actually, you know, you look at the skills that you get out of a chemistry degree, fantastic skills that you get that are really appreciated in the job market. And I think, as you know, chemistry undergraduates are necessary, they're needed, and they take up a lot of the jobs in the STEM areas as well. So I'm really, you know, in a way heartened that actually as a graduating chemist, you've got a very good choice to get a good opportunity to get a graduate job and kind of further your career in whatever aspect that you want to go into.
Thank you, Jason. I'd certainly advocate for the transferable skills that you pick up during your PhD. And just a final quick response from Vinicíus.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what Jason just said. If you are doing a PhD, it doesn't mean that you need to stay in academia. You can easily transfer the skills that you got during like those years in an industry job, because most of the skills are going to be the same. You're going to learn how to manage your time. You're going to learn how to write like a report or proposal. You're going to learn how to act in a laboratory, about health and safety, how to communicate it with people. So all the skills, they are valuable like inside the academia and outside academia. So I don't see, I mean, in my opinion, I don't see that there are PhDs that are completely focused in academia and others that I don't. I see there, it's more about what you want to do after your PhD. So of course, you can get like some different courses during your PhD that will get you like a better chance to get an industry job. You can do like some teaching courses when you're in your PhD that's going to say, oh yeah, I might want to stay in academia. But it's more like about how you're going to frame your PhD than what the university is going to do for you in this case. Because the PhD is there, like the masters are there, and so do what you think is going to be the best for you. The opportunities are there. That's how I see it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to our panelists for answering the questions. I think we are run out of time for questions, but I do have a final one. And I'm going to ask each panelist just to give a quick summary of their thoughts. And I'm going to weave a final question that's coming on the Q&A into that answer. Just for those of you who have asked questions we haven't got to, my colleagues will be able to respond either directly in the chat, or we'll commit to coming back afterwards with some fuller question answers as well. So if I can just ask the panelists, the order I'll go in is I'll come to Vinicíus first, and then to Jenny, then to Jason, then to David. So thinking about the role that the RSC can play in defining a good future for chemistry in universities, and if you can also just add in if you think that industry too should be contributing to that future and the role that industry can play. So Vinicíus, can I come to you first?
Yeah, sure. I think RSC has a huge role like in how to help and build the chemistry research in academia and also outside academia. Having an understand about what kind of funding or like helping shape like laws and everything, and like giving like mentorship to early career researchers that's gonna move to academia and outside academia, and like to understand the market. For example, I'm international early career research here in the UK, so I'm still understanding the dynamics here, and RSC has been playing like a huge role on that. So I can go to RSC websites, to webinars, and learn more about everything. So I think this is what RSC, the way that I see that RSC can contribute to face and fight this financial crisis. Like, and the second question, sorry, Alan, could you
just if there's anything that you believe that industry can do to help support chemistry in universities?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I know like a lot of projects that are PhD projects or like long-term projects that are supported by industry. So looking for opportunities that industries can collaborate together with academia would help to face this financial crisis. Because it doesn't mean that when we are doing a research in academia, it's just like fundamental research. It could be like also applied research that could be used for industry. So it's important for industry to also look after like what's doing in academia and support that. So it's definitely there is opportunities there.
Thank you. So the future of the workforce and of the innovation that comes through university. So thank you.
Yeah.
Jenny, can I come to you?
So the HRSC is highly focused on the chemical sciences, and the second part of this question is also implying a really tight focus on the chemical sciences. And I would like the RSC to be more evangelical about chemistry and where it can lead, both within the chemical sciences and without. The RSC has got ties across industry policy, academia, national and international, at all levels, as well as education. And chemistry is unusually privileged that more A-level students take chemistry than actually are interested in doing chemistry, because it's a required subject for medicine. So we've got huge potential of hardworking, highly motivated young people. So how can we harvest a few of those? There is a perception in the wider world that chemistry is a hard subject. It's not, but that's the perception. And I think the RSC could be working more effectively to challenge that. And also that a chemistry degree can lead to more than just a lab job, because that's turning people off from applying for chemistry at a university degree, because they don't see the beyond the chemical sciences. So I'm not going to mention the industry thing. I think chemistry, the RSC can act as a conduit between all of these and have RSC staff being on multiple groups. So drawing the information from ECC, Education Community Committee, and the Diversity and Inclusion Forum, and thinking about how the pipeline starts at primary school and not at age 18 when they hit university, and thinking about educating the society at large, and thinking my focus is from the bottom up and sort of finishing when my students graduate.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jenny. And that point you make about everyone who studies chemistry through school and taking some of that understanding and the importance of chemistry into their kind of everyday lives also helps us in terms of advocating for the importance of the subject and the profession. So thank you. Jason, can I come to you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We can moan about the current challenges, but I think I'd like to be kind of more positive. And I think the links between the departments of chemistry and the RSC are crucially important here, because I think the RSC is providing us with lots of ideas and impetus that is promoting chemistry across the stage, and that gets noticed, I think, at governmental levels. So I'd like to make sure that the RSC helps to cement chemistry as a vital science, which I think it does. It needs to be able to show that we can recognise the value of chemistry to the UK economy, and I think there's been the chemistry workforce review that really highlighted that, actually, and that's really, really good. It allows us to shout about the value of our graduates. I think we need to recognise that chemistry graduates have an exceptional skill set that gets them jobs. So, this is really important. If people want to come to university, they want to leave university with a skill set that's going to allow them to get a job afterwards. I think that's vitally important. And then retaining the identity of chemistry as a subject, I think, is really important as well, because I think it can often get lost with all of the spectacular advances that are going on in supposedly the other sciences like biology and like medicine, like physics and all of that. We need to be able to shout a lot about chemistry, because biology is just chemistry, really. It's just on a bigger scale, right? So I think we need to be able to do these things. And in terms of the overlap with industry, so one thing I remember back to when I was an undergraduate, the reason I did the particular course that I did was because it had 2 industrial placements in it. And because I was worried about getting a job afterwards. And okay, my career took a different pathway, but that's great. But that is, I think, a really important skill, getting that experiential learning. And it's something I think that we are very, very good at in this sector compared with other sectors. And so that's something I think we need to push on. And I think if we reflect on the direction that UKRI are turning with their new head towards more government strategy and potentially more translational research. I think we need to be able to have that interaction and a strong interaction with industry. It is another funding route, and that's very, very important if UKRI funding is effectively flatlining anyway. So you need to get this. Of course, there still will be curiosity-driven research, but that translation of research is becoming increasingly important.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jason. And for some final words, I will come to David.
Thanks, Helen. So I was just reflecting as people were talking, to go back to what I said, universities are having to take very short-term decisions at the moment in order to survive, decisions that they do not want to take. So one of the real strengths of the Royal Society of Chemistry and other professional bodies is to be able to take a longer-term view, and that influence with other decision makers and with government. So, and that's one of the things where we have previously been very influential, and we need to continue to do that. My quick answer to your question about should industry be more involved, Helen, is yes. My slightly longer answer is because there is a real threat to UK industry if we do not develop the talent pipeline, or whether they be undergraduate students graduating, postgraduate students, the research that helps to develop the ecosystems. We talked a lot about chemistry deserts. That support will not be there from universities to support industry. And of course, there is huge economic impact if those industries then choose that they're going to move away from the UK. So again, I see that as being a really important part of the Royal Society of Chemistry's role here, is in brokering that connection between academia and industry.
Excellent. Thank you very much, David. And for those who are joining this call, Board of Trustees at the RSC will meet tomorrow. And in fact, industry is a very important topic of conversation for our discussions tomorrow. So can I just say thank you so much to the panellists from all of your questions and also the answers the panellists have shared. I think some key takeaways, there are many takeaways, and we'll pull these all together and share those with you. But really about the chemistry community, focusing on solutions, so understanding where the challenges are, but I think collectively there is so much that we can do. Championing the value of chemistry so that it's understood as the critical role that it is, particularly with decision makers, focusing in on the role the RSC plays and can play in terms of ensuring the strength of the profession, but also the discipline. Remembering that there are very many stakeholders within the chemical sciences ecosystem and understanding how those all interplay. And I think that goes back to the points about the students being such an important part of that ecosystem. And also how the discipline can be more innovative, particularly in how we choose to teach and do research. And also addressing some of maybe the perceived challenges of the way that chemistry, the costs associated with that, particularly in some of the decisions that are made in universities. So again, thank you very much for all of the discussion. I would just want to kind of draw those of you who've joined this webinar, just your attention to some of the resources that the RSC has produced, and also we continue to produce in terms of the reports that we collaborate with the community on. And I think there's going to be some links posted in the chat function, particularly to our Chemist Community Fund and also the career support that we offer, and also policy briefing and data packs that we produce. And this is to help you understand even more fully the challenges that are facing chemistry in higher education, but also some of the opportunities and actions that we can take to address that as well. Please feel free to use and share our resources on why chemistry is such a fundamental, important part of the economy and society. And in particular, there is a workforce report, which I referenced earlier, which is the Future Workforce and Education Pathways, a Future in Chemistry. And again, please do share that widely. We use it quite extensively with government and also for influencing policy, and also for setting out the really important and fundamental work that chemistry and chemical scientists do. And that is really the important takeaway, that chemistry is such an important part, not just of society, but also to the way that we live our lives day to day. So thank you again to panelists, thank you to my colleagues who've pulled together this webinar, and thank you to everybody who has joined us over the last hour. So thank you, and I hope that we have a chance to hold future webinars, and I think this important topic will continue to be a key focus of discussion. So thank you.